لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to lecture number 12 in the psycholinguistics course. Today we will be focusing on a very important topic. Remember that in psycholinguistics we focus on the acquisition of language. One of the goals of psycholinguistics is to understand how people acquire language and where language is processed and represented in the brain, and also how people use language to speak and understand one another. So the first goal of psycholinguistics was to understand how people acquire language. When we say language acquisition, we have first language acquisition and second language acquisition. First language acquisition, we talked about that, I believe, previously, is more related to children, usually, because we acquire our first languages at a very early stage. At a very early stage. That's when we acquire our first languages. Then, for some people, second language acquisition starts, well, at the age of 4, 5, 6, or for some people it's 18, for some people it's 30 years later. It depends. But the interesting thing is that for the vast majority of people in the world, bilingualism is the norm. Speaking two or more languages is the norm in a lot of the countries in the world. But for some parts of the world, the exception is that someone speaks 2 or 3 languages. Right. So today we will focus on second language acquisition. Now, some people are better than others in language acquisition. We all know that, right? We know that this person speaks 2 or 3 languages, this person is not good with language, and so on. So, what makes some people better language learners? That's a logical question. Why is it? Sometimes you have twins, you know, 2 people, 2 brothers. One of them is a better language learner than the other for some reason. First of all, we should admit that there is no one reason, there is no one thing to determine what will make this person successful or how this thing will influence how he or she acquires language. There's no one reason. There are many reasons. But here we look at some of the characteristics or factors that influence language acquisition, particularly second language acquisition. Second language acquisition is when you acquire a language after you have acquired the first language. All right, this is really important. So, second language acquisition is starting to learn another language after you have learned or acquired the first language. Here we have a number of factors, like age, personality, motivation, cognition, and native language. Let's look at each one of them very quickly and very briefly and see how age, personality, motivation, cognition, and the native language will influence the ease or difficulty of second language acquisition. First of all, age. It's probably well known worldwide that starting learning a second language at an early stage is an advantage. It makes language acquisition more successful, let's say. Research suggests that those who learned the second language earlier were more successful in language acquisition. So what they would do normally is that those researchers will, for example, in the United States, they will go to some people and say, well, when did you come to the United States? Immigrants. When did you come to the United States? When was your age of, what was your age of arrival? When you arrived in the States, how old were you? So, for example, they would categorize them into two types or two groups. So here, for example, someone would say, well, when I came to the United States, I was 7, the other 8, the other maybe another 8, then 7, then 6, right? So let's say 10 and smaller or younger. Then we have the other group. So we ask more people, 9, 7, well, 3, things like this. And here we have the second group, let's say 10 years or more. So people who came when they were 15, okay, or let's say 11, 16, 20, all right, and so on, 12. So then what they do is that they test these people for language proficiency, and then they test those people. And they have a lot of tests, like grammar tests, phonological tests, nativeness tests. So they would record them, for example, and then show native speakers or ask native speakers to listen to them, to the recordings, and then judge whether this person is a native speaker or not. So mostly for this group, mostly they sound like native speakers, even though they came around 8, but they sound like native speakers. But people who came at 15, at the age of 15, 16, 20, 12, overall, were less likely to be judged as native speakers. So people listen to them, they don't see them, they just hear, they just listen to what they said. And they say, well, I don't think this is a native speaker. So overall, it's better when people come at early stage to the native or to the target language, or to the country in which the target language is used. Right, so this is age. Overall, when we start learning language at an earlier stage, it makes language acquisition more successful. That's age. Personality. And that's something really, really interesting, because sometimes we have sisters or brothers, but one is more like polyglot, someone who speaks 2, 3, 4 languages, and the other will be like one language only, right? This is where personality comes to play. Overall, we have two types of people, or two characters: introverted people, extroverted, and introverted people. Extrovert and introvert. Just focus on the morpheme. This will give you the hint. Introvert or extrovert. Introvert means people who don't really like going out with other people. They don't like interacting with others. They just want to focus on themselves. Introverted. Right? Introverted. They don't want to talk with anyone. They don't want to interact. They are shy. things like that. Extroverted people, on the other hand, are people who like going out and meeting new people, who are not afraid of being, not ashamed of producing an error, for example, when they speak. So who do you think will be more successful, extroverted people or introverted people? Who will be more successful in language acquisition? Research suggests that extroverted people or learners are more successful in language acquisition. Why? Because they don't worry about mistakes. And this is a lesson for all of us. We are learning English at the moment. We learn English. So we shouldn't really worry about mistakes. We all produce mistakes. We all produce mistakes. But without producing a mistake, language acquisition is impossible. It's impossible for anyone to acquire a language without trying and making some errors. Actually, let's celebrate our errors. Yeah? Let's celebrate them. We are happy with them. Because yes, now I speak, I make errors, and then I learn, basically, at the end. I learn another language. And we know that if we continue talking with people, not worrying at all about mistakes, one day we will speak with less errors. All right? And also, extroverted people interact more with people. And if you interact more, you learn more. This is key for language acquisition. If you interact more with people, especially native speakers, if you interact with them linguistically, then you'll be more likely to acquire the language and be more successful in acquiring it. Right, so extroverted people will be more successful, or generally are more successful in language acquisition than introverted people. Motivation. This is something really, really interesting, because motivation is something hidden, something you don't see. It's the internal desire to do or achieve something. To do or achieve something. So, why would you, for example, pay money and go to school, study, and go to university, and so on? Because you have motivation in you. You have this desire that I want to, for example, get a bachelor's degree or to learn English. So you pay because you have motivation, or because you have this internal desire to do something. Other people will be saying, well, no, I don't care. I don't want that. They are not motivated. Basically, they are not motivated. So it's the same. If you are motivated, you should work, right? Language acquisition or studying is not a simple thing, is it? So it needs a lot of work. Studying actually requires a lot of work. We all have been there. We all there were times in which we said, well, why did I just register in this university or for this program? It's tiresome. We have to do a lot of homework, a lot of studying all the time. But we know very well that after, well, a couple of months of hard working, we will pass this course. If we work hard, we will pass this course and other courses. So we are motivated. We have this motivation that if I work hard now, I will pass the course. All right? So I have this. That's why you work hard at night throughout the whole semester, like 4 months of studying all the time, learning the new words, and things like that. So why do you do that? Because you are motivated. Motivated learners are more successful than learners or people who are not motivated. Right, cognition. Students with good cognitive abilities outperform or do better. So outperform means do better than those with less cognitive abilities. Cognitive abilities, if you think of IQ, for example, intelligence tests, quizzes, memory, for example. If you have good memory, of course you will be a better learner. Attention, if you are someone who pays attention to everything, then you will be a better learner than someone who does not pay attention at all. Some people, when you speak, they spot the errors. They say, well, I think you should say this, you should say that. This is a good thing. Well, noticing or paying attention is a good thing. But of course, criticizing people all the time, like this is incorrect, is not good. But having this attention, this is a cognitive ability. Paying attention, also remembering, memory, intelligence, things like that. Those are cognitive abilities. Students with good cognitive abilities outperform, they do better than students or learners with lower cognitive abilities. Now, the native language, the native or first language. It can be called the first language. Native language is your first language. So generally speaking, if the first and second languages are similar, language acquisition will be facilitated, will be easier. All right? So if the two languages are similar phonologically or grammatically, or if they share a lot of words, then language acquisition will be facilitated. Learning the second language shouldn't really take you much time. This could be called a transfer effect. Transfer effect. So you have language number 1, you have language number 2. You have transfer of grammar, phonology, morphology, and all of that from the first to the second, and from the second to the first. So both languages will affect each other. So if they are similar, then that's a good thing. If they are similar, then that's a good thing, because it will be easier for you to learn the second language or the target language. Why is that? Transfer is applying knowledge, maybe grammar, vocabulary, phonology, all of this, applying knowledge of one language and the other language. This is called transfer. So again, you have L1 or first language, and you have second language, L2. If you use Arabic grammar in English, this is called transfer. If you use, again, not the lecture, forget about it. If you use English grammar with Arabic words, that's also transfer. So using or applying knowledge of one language and the other. This results in two things. Two types of transfer. The first one is positive transfer. Positive transfer, something that is good. Sometimes it's negative. Do you have examples? Let's have a look. First of all, positive transfer. What is positive transfer. When the two languages, like the first language and the second language, Arabic and English, we all speak Arabic, I believe. So Arabic is our first language, English is our second, for example. So in the two languages, Arabic and English, share the same linguistic feature, any linguistic feature, maybe a word, pronunciation, grammatical rule, and so on. We have positive transfer when the two share the same. For example, in Spanish, the s morpheme is added to nouns to make plurals. Just like English, you know, in English we have cars, books, we just add this s. In Spanish, it's the same. They have this s. So, this is called positive transfer. It makes it easier for Spanish speakers to learn English because both have the same. Also, sometimes the two languages share the same word, which also can result in positive transfer. And take these examples. We have the following Spanish words. Those are Spanish words, all right? Aceite here, or oil, is azayt in Arabic. Azayt. Notice that it comes from Arabic, this one. Aceite or athait, depends. Spanish people, I think, will call it athait. Mexican people would say aceite, I believe. Then we have azúcar here, or azúcar. Azúcar is a Spanish word for sugar or azúcar. So again, that's another word that is shared between Arabic and Spanish. So if someone is learning Spanish and then, well, he or she goes to the market, for example, they can order sugar or oil or whatever quickly with ease because it's the same in the first language, and we know that. Also, lemon or limon, it's lemon or a laymun in Arabic. So it's shared in the three languages, Arabic, English, and Spanish. So that's called positive transfer. If it transfers from the first to the second, then this will make language acquisition easier. So that's why we call it positive transfer. As you would imagine, transfer can also be negative. And what do we mean by negative transfer? It's the incorrect use of knowledge of one language in the other. When the two languages work differently in syntax, Arabic and English, different syntax, right? So sometimes if you use English syntax with Arabic words, this is called negative transfer, and vice versa. Let's look at this example. Negative grammatical transfer. An example. An Arabic speaker, saying, I like car red. I like car red. Now in Arabic, we would say السيارة الحمراء, but in English, of course, we say red cars, for example. Red cars, not car red. So this comes from Arabic, right? And it's incorrect in the target language, so we call it negative transfer. Also, you good teacher. You good teacher. What's the missing thing here? You are, for example. A good teacher. you are a good student. Some Arabic speakers would say, you good student, or you good teacher, or this good. This is incorrect because in Arabic we don't have these auxiliaries, right? But in English it's a must. We must say are or is or am. We cannot say this good. We say this is good, or you are pretty, for example, not you pretty, and things like that. So this is called negative grammatical transfer. Now, is it only grammar? No, it can also affect phonology. So let's have a look at negative phonological transfer. An Arab, someone whose first language is Arabic, saying street instead of street, or spring instead of spring. Arabic, of course, does not allow CCC, or consonant, consonant, consonant at syllable codas. You know syllables, when you have syllables, so any word that you consider. In Arabic, you cannot have 3 consonants at the very beginning of words. You cannot have that. And that's why when we have words like street here, how many consonants do we have? We have number 1, sa, ta, and then ra. So 3 consonants. So what do Arabic speakers do? They would either say, they would insert a vowel to make it similar to Arabic. They will insert a vowel in the middle here. No. In the middle here, they will add a vowel. So they would say either sitrit or stirit. Stirit or sitrit. So it's either here or there. Alright? So sitrit, or stirit. Depends on where you come from and what's your first dialect. Also, spring or spitting. Some Arabic speakers would say spitting, not sibring. But in the Gulf, mostly we would say sibring when we first start to learn English. So this is called negative phonological transfer, because this rule that you should not have consonant, consonant, consonant at the very beginning of words, this comes from Arabic, not English. So using it in English will give you negative phonological transfer. Also consider changing P with B, because in Arabic we don't have this much, so many people would use B instead of P. So they would say, for example, I am praying instead of saying I am praying, or you know, he was barking instead of he was parking. And you know the difference between park and bark. Bark is the sound of the dog, so you cannot say he is barking, but he is parking. Yes, he is parking his car. Yeah, so people, things like this. So this is a negative phonological transfer. Example of negative phonological transfer. Lastly, knowledge types. This is also related to language acquisition and age. This is also related to age. Overall, we have 2 types of knowledge that we want to focus on here. We have declarative knowledge. You know, when you declare something, declarative knowledge. Like, what is the capital of Saudi Arabia? It's Riyadh. What is the temperature in Al-Hasa right now? It's that. This is called declarative knowledge. knowledge that something is X. The capital of Saudi Arabia is this. Or rules, for example. Even grammatical rules. Now, many of you know, for example, that when you have two, for example, let's say two, and then book, you cannot say to book. You know the rule. You must have S. This is called a rule. You know the rule. Maybe you know the rule in Spanish. You know that in Spanish you must add S to words. Right? So this is called declarative knowledge. It is knowing what? Knowing the rule, knowing the information. It is often explicit, so anyone can talk about it. If I ask you about grammar in English, you say yes. Past, you have to add ed. Plural, you have to add s. You talk about it. It's explicit. And it's conscious. You know it. But there is another type of knowledge that is called procedural knowledge. Knowledge of how something is done. This is unconscious and it's implicit. So when you speak in Arabic, for example, when you speak in Arabic, you apply Arabic words, right? You apply Arabic grammar. You know the Arabic grammar. It's in your head. But if I ask you to talk about it, you won't be able to do that. You would say, well, I didn't study Arabic syntax. I don't know. But you apply Arabic syntax or grammatical rules. So this is called procedural knowledge. It's a procedure. Your brain knows what to do. It's knowledge of how something is done. It's the actual doing of information processing. It's like when I give you a problem like 1 plus 20 minus 1 equals whatever. At this point, your brain will be processing, working. This is called procedural knowledge. But if I say, 10 minus 10, and you already know it, it's declarative. You have this information. You memorized it. This is declarative. But procedural, it's the actual work. It's just like when you speak about Arabic. You talk in Arabic, you apply all the rules. Like you don't have big mistakes in Arabic because you obey the rules. You have procedural knowledge about Arabic. It's unconscious. You don't know that. You think you don't have the rules, but your brain knows because you don't make mistakes. And it's implicit. You don't talk about it. If I ask you about it, you won't even, or most people would not be able to speak about it. While learning any skill, language, for example, is a skill. We learn declarative knowledge first. When we learn English, for example, they told us when you have two, then, all right, the pen is not working properly. All right, so 2 books. We know this rule. But sometimes when we talk spontaneously, we drop that S. So we say in the middle 2 book. Or yesterday I play football. It happens. Because until now, knowledge is not procedural. We have declarative knowledge. We have knowledge. We know the rule. But we don't know how. Our brains don't know how. So, with practice, we start to form procedural knowledge. After enough time and practice, the knowledge becomes automatic. Like driving a car. When you first drive a manual car, you know, well, first I have to press this, then I have to press that, I have to move this gear higher or whatever. This is called rules at the very beginning. Even when you drive, you think about the gear, you think of moving it. But then with time, it's automatic. It's like you drive, you are thinking about something else or talking in the phone, and you'll be changing the gear and driving without thinking about what you are doing. This is called automatic knowledge. Now it's procedural, automatic. But at the very beginning, it's declarative. It's the same with language. We start with declarative knowledge. Grammar, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the rule. But then with time, it becomes automatic. As we get older, this is the point, we rely more on declarative knowledge, which is not as efficient as procedural knowledge for skill learning. And that's why we have age effects. And that's where they come from. All right. Thank you very much for attending this lecture. I hope that you found it interesting and easy to follow. If you have any questions, as always, you can meet me in the live session or send me an email. I'll do my best to reply to you. Thank you very much again, and see you in the coming lecture. Assalamu alaikum.